Nevertheless, the dogged persistence of the British eventually reduced the shipment of slaves across the Atlantic. When the threat of being boarded seemed imminent, the Arabs would throw slaves overboard to drown.
How can people be so sick?
Boy, Mr. Shady.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you know what time it is. It's your boy again, Shady, one and only, and we are back again today on this beautiful day, guys. Okay, so this video today is a highly requested video. Well, should I say highly requested? Very requested video. Okay, because I've had about maybe 5 to 10 requests, so I shouldn't say highly, but very requested. Okay, we checked out Britain's crusade against slavery. Okay, you guys were like, yo Shady, check out Thomas Sowell TV as well. So is it Sowell? Thomas Sowell Thomas Sowell videos as well. So that's not too much, guys. We're going to jump on this right over. You said check out the hidden truth behind the end of slavery, Thomas Sowell. So that's not too much, guys. We are going to go straight to action to check this out, because we are educating ourselves about history, about things that happened. We're trying to find out the truths of the matter. So guys, let's go straight to action. But before we start this video, make sure you smash like, subscribe, give me some love, and let's get this started. All right, guys. First of all, subscribe, like. So Thomas Sowell TV, we are subscribed. Let's do this. Please check to see that you're still subscribed. Guys, please. Okay, support him on Patreon and gain access to exclusive contents. Okay, the truth behind the end of slavery, part 1. I'm ready. Let's go. The excerpt is taken from the book Black Rednecks and White Liberals.
Slavery was destroyed within the United States at staggering costs in blood and treasure, but the struggle was over within a few ghastly years of warfare. Nevertheless, the Civil War was the bloodiest war ever fought in the Western Hemisphere, and more Americans were killed in that war than in any other war in the country's history.
Okay.
But this was a highly atypical, indeed unique, way to end slavery. In
Wow.
most of the rest of the world, unremitting efforts to destroy the institution of slavery went on for more than a century, on 1,000 shifting fronts, and in the face of determined and ingenious efforts to continue the trade in human beings.
Basically, to end slavery, they had to fight war over it. Is that what he's saying? To end slavery, they had to fight war, and they lost lots of Americans. Wait, let's start again.
Slavery was destroyed within the United States at staggering costs in blood and treasure, but the struggle was over within a few ghastly years of warfare.
Okay.
Nevertheless, the Civil War was the bloodiest war ever fought in the Western Hemisphere, and more Americans were killed in that war than in any other war in the country's history. But this was a highly atypical, indeed unique, way to end slavery.
Yeah.
In most of the rest of the world, unremitting efforts to destroy the institution of slavery went on for more than a century, on 1,000 shifting fronts, and in the face of determined and ingenious efforts to continue the trade in human beings.
Wow. Even though countries were trying to end slavery, some people were fighting to keep it. They're finding ingenious means to sustain the institution. That's crazy. Selling human beings, people like you. I mean, okay, not exactly like you, because the skin color is different, but we're still the same under.
Within the British Empire, the abolition of slavery was accompanied by the payment of compensation to slave owners for what was legally the confiscation of their property. This cost the British government £20 million.
Wow.
A huge sum in the 19th century,
Back in the day.
about 5% of the nation's annual output. A similar plan to have the federal government of the United States buy up the slaves and then set them free was proposed in Congress, but was never implemented. The costs of emancipating the millions of slaves in the United States would have been more than half the annual national output.
Because they basically built the country on slavery. No? Basically built the country on slave labor, so it would cost so much. Millions of slaves. That's a madness.
But still less than the economic costs of the Civil War, quite aside from the cost in blood and lives, and a legacy of lasting bitterness in the South, growing out of its defeat and the widespread destruction it suffered during that conflict. While the British could simply abolish slavery in their Western Hemisphere colonies, they faced a more daunting and longer-lasting task of patrolling the Atlantic off the coast of Africa.
The West Africa Squadron, the British Royal Navy's deadly battle to end the slave trade.
In order to prevent slave ships of various nationalities from continuing to supply slaves illegally. Even during the Napoleonic Wars, Britain continued to keep some of its warships on patrol off West Africa. Moreover, such patrols likewise tried to interdict the shipments of slaves from East Africa through the Indian Ocean, the Red Sea, and the Persian Gulf. Brazil capitulated to British demands that it end its slave trade after being publicly humiliated by British warships that seized and destroyed slave ships within Brazil's own waters.
Whoa.
In 1873, 2 British cruisers appeared off the coast of Zanzibar and threatened to blockade the island unless the slave market there shut down.
Yo, the British were actually actively fighting it. Like they were fighting it actively, sending the soldiers out there to make sure it ended. Like it wasn't just words. They didn't just say it. They said it, people are doing it, they enforced it. Wow, they put the whole power of the nation behind it to make sure slavery ended. Incredible.
It was shut down. It would be hard to think of any other crusade pursued so relentlessly for so long by any nation at such mounting costs without any economic or other tangible benefit to itself.
Wow. You know what, guys? At this point, I want to clap. Okay, at this point, I'm going to clap for this. For whatever reason it was done, but the effort they put towards ending it, very commendable.
These costs included bribes paid to Spain and Portugal to get their cooperation with the effort to stop the international slave trade, and the costs of maintaining naval patrols and of resettling freed slaves, not to mention dangerous frictions with France and the United States, among other countries. Captains of British warships who detained vessels suspected of carrying slaves were legally liable if those vessels turned out to have no slaves on board.
Wait, let's hear that point again. I think I missed that.
Not to mention dangerous frictions with France and the United States, among other countries. Captains of British warships who detained vessels suspected of carrying slaves were legally liable if those vessels turned out to have no slaves on board.
Mad.
The human costs were also large.
Oh, man.
The heavy drain, physical and mental, in keeping squadrons on the East African coast was reflected in the loss of 282 officers and men in the 10 years 1875 to 1885.
May their souls rest in peace.
And this did not include those invalidated home. Naval personnel, racked by fever, sunstroke, and dysentery, were forced to retire prematurely and live on a small pittance. The cost of upkeep of the squadron over the 20 years prior to 1890 was estimated at 4 million sterling, and this did not take into account the large amount of work imposed on consular and judicial staff at Zanzibar in trying cases and dealing with reports, etc. Even so, the results were slow in coming. More streamlined slave ships were designed in hopes of being able to outrun the ships of the Royal Navy in the Atlantic.
Whoa, these slavers, they were so serious about keeping the institution going. Like I said in the intro, they found ingenious methods, ingenious ways to keep the institution alive. But the British were like, not under our watch.
Nevertheless, the dogged persistence of the British eventually reduced the shipment of slaves across the Atlantic and across the waters of the Islamic world.
Well done, Britain.
Although the French flag was for many years widely used as protection from the boarding of ships on the high seas by the British Navy, even by slave traders who were neither French nor authorized to fly the French flag. Eventually, France itself turned against slavery, outlawed the institution, and sent some of its own warships to patrol the Atlantic off the coast of Africa to intercept and deter the shipment of slaves to the Western Hemisphere.
Yo, I didn't know how dogged the British were about ending slavery. I didn't know how committed the British were to this. Okay, I knew, yes, from the videos I've watched that they ended it, but this intensity, the seriousness to which they committed themselves to ending this, very commendable, very commendable.
The American flag was likewise so used, and the United States, like France, eventually turned against the slave trade and sent warships to join the Atlantic patrols to interdict slave shipments. Although by 1860, the Atlantic slave trade had been effectively stopped, the slave trade from East Africa across the Indian Ocean, the Red Sea, and the Persian Gulf took longer to be reduced significantly. Off the east coast of Africa, smaller Arab vessels called dhows hugged the coastlines in waters too shallow for the British warships to enter. One British commodore estimated that he captured one dhow for every 8 that escaped.
Whoa.
Nevertheless, during the period from 1866 to 1869, 129 slave vessels were captured and 3,380 slaves were freed. When the threat of being boarded seemed imminent, the Arabs would throw slaves overboard to drown, rather than have them be found on board.
Disregard for human life. Disregard for human life. Like, it was like the Arabs were so serious about this slavery back in the day. I mean, I hear that in the recent times there's anyway, we're going to talk about it in another video, okay, about the Arabs and slavery. But for now, let's focus on this.
Which could lead to British seizure of the vessel and punishment of those who manned it. The worst that could befall the slaves was when the slaver was overhauled by a British cruiser, and they might then be flung overboard to dispose of all evidence. Devereux mentions a case where the Arabs, when pursued by an English cruiser, cut the throats of 24 slaves and threw them overboard. Colomb also states that Arabs would not hesitate to knock slaves on the head and throw them overboard to avoid capture. Because there were only a few naval ships available to cover a vast expanse of water in this region, British warships would often launch smaller boats to engage the Arab slave dhows. In these cases, as one study put it, the slave traffickers frequently did not hesitate to attack boat crews in defense of their profits. Battles between the Arabs' vessels and the smaller British craft were especially likely when the larger ships that launched them were too far away to reach the scene in time to join the battle. In other cases, the Arabs fled even from the smaller British vessels. An episode in 1866 was typical. On 26 April 1866, the Penguin set out after a dhow and fired several shots in an effort to make the crew come to. When the dhow failed to lower its sail, Gartorth felt certain that she was a slaver and ceased firing for the sake of the slaves on board. However, he managed to close with the dhow, which then made for the rocks through a heavy surf. By the time the ship's boats could be lowered to follow, the Arab crew had fled, but the pounding surf made any attempt by the slavers to salvage the human cargo too dangerous. To their horror, the boat crew found that they too could not reach the dhow, which was rapidly filling with water, drowning the slaves.
Oh my days.
The boat officer decided that he could not risk coming in close to the dhow, but several of the crewmen of the cutter recklessly dived in and swam through the surf to the dhow.
Oh, what courage, the courageousness of the soldiers to risk their lives to save other lives. They might die in the process, but they're like, well, we save them or we die trying. Such selflessness, okay, such selflessness. I mean, I rate this. I definitely rate this, okay, guys.
In a remarkable display of courage, the sailors managed to bring 28 of the slaves back to the boat. But the dhow appeared to have had more than 200 slaves on board, and most died in the pounding waves. In another episode, the Arabs' ruthlessness toward the slaves was further revealed.
It's almost looking like it became a war between the Arabs and the British over the slave trade. It's like they don't want to end it. They don't want to end it, so the British just have to basically force it with everything they had.
When the Daphne's cutter captured a dhow with 156 slaves on board, many were found to be in the final stages of starvation and dysentery. One woman was brought out of the dhow with a month-old infant in her arms. The baby's forehead was crushed, and when she was asked how the injury had happened, she explained to the ship's interpreter that as the boat came alongside, the baby began to cry. One of the dhowmen, fearing that the sailors would hear the cries, picked up a stone and crushed the child's head.
Oh my days, the horror that my people have been through. Oh my God. Oh my God. Yeah, this is disheartening, very disheartening. How can people be so sick? What disregard for human life?
This was not a unique act. British missionary and explorer David Livingstone related a similar incident.
Yeah, David Livingstone. Oh my days. Growing up, we always heard about David Livingstone. So much that I thought Livingstone was a Nigerian name. Honestly, so much that I thought Livingstone was a Nigerian name. David Livingstone, big up. Okay, big up.
Picked up a stone and crushed the child's head. This was not a unique act. British missionary and explorer David Livingstone related a similar incident on land. One woman, who was unable to carry both her load and young child, had the child taken from her and saw its brains dashed out on a stone.
Oh!
Dr. Livingstone also reported having nightmares for weeks after encountering Arab slave traders and their victims. Not only was this Christian missionary shocked by the brutality of the Arab slave traders, so was Muhammad Ali, the ruler of Egypt, who was a battle-hardened military commander. None of this means that the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade should be ignored, downplayed, or excused, nor have they been. A vast literature has detailed the vile conditions under which slaves from Africa lived and died during their voyages to the Western Hemisphere.
Just because we are born with black skin, just because they were born with black skin on a different continent, just that. Imagine people in their country, they were just happy living their normal lives, just doing their normal things, and then suddenly, boom, people that look different from them just come to them and just want to steal their freedom.
But the much less publicized slave trade to the Islamic countries had even higher mortality rates en route, as well as involving larger numbers of people over the centuries, even though the Atlantic slave trade had higher peaks while it lasted. By a variety of accounts, most of the slaves who were marched across the Sahara toward the Mediterranean died on the way. While these were mostly women and girls, the males faced a special danger: castration, to reduce the eunuchs in demand as harem attendants in the Islamic world.
Oh my days, they cut off their thing, they cut off their everything. Then what are they now? What are they? Neither man nor woman, nor anything in between. They're just God have mercy. God have mercy.
Because castration was forbidden by Islamic law, the operation tended to be performed, usually crudely, in the hinterlands, before the slave caravans reached places within the effective control of the Ottoman Empire.
And there were men, like there were men, like men, a man, a big man, a big man. Even kids though, but a man is just cut off the thing, bruv.
The great majority of those operated on died as a result.
Of course.
But the price of eunuchs was so much higher than the price of other slaves that the practice was still profitable on net balance. The British Governor-General of the Sudan, C.G. Gordon, estimated that between 1875 and 1879, from 80,000 to 100,000 slaves were exported through his region. General Gordon imposed the death penalty on those convicted of castrating slave men to market them as eunuchs. His attempt to stamp out slave trading in the Sudan cost him his own life as an opposing army, raised and led by Muhammad Mahad, defeated his troops at Khartoum in 1885 and killed Gordon, after which the slave trade flourished again. British control in the region was firmly re-established in 1898 by the crushing victory of troops led by Lord Kitchener at Omdurman, and including a young officer named Winston Churchill.
Oh, Winston Churchill played a part in it as well. Oh, and PLM went to tarnish his statue, his memorial, They want to bring it down, not even knowing what my guy did in history. Come on.
On the issue of slavery, it was essentially Western civilization against the world. At the time, Western civilization had the power to prevail against all other civilizations. That is how and why slavery was destroyed as an institution in almost the whole world.
If it's not because of the Western world, that slavery thing wouldn't have ended. And in fact, even right now, slavery is still going on. It's still going on in some parts of the world. They're hiding it, okay? Trying to hide it, but it's still going on. So imagine the Western world hadn't intervened. For whatever reasons they intervened, but imagine that intervened. Bro, where are we going to be right now?
But it did not happen all at once, or even within a few decades. When the British finally stamped out slavery in Tanganyika in 1922, it was more than half a century after the Emancipation Proclamation in the United States, and vestiges of slavery still survived in parts of Africa into the 21st century.
Oh my God, this is an eye-opener, like a proper eye-opener. Things that I never knew about, okay? I never knew about. Yes, I knew that the Arab world had a lot of slavery, and I knew that around the world there was a lot of slavery, but knowing about it this in-depth is so gory. The pictures painted in my mind is so disturbing, so disheartening. It's so sickening how people can treat other people, how people can disregard other people's lives. Okay, imagine castrating a man, a big man. You just castrate him, like cut off the whole thing. How do you survive him to live? And then when he leaves, how do you want him to feel? He's just gonna be there feeling like a waste man, like wasted, like useless, like done, like once end his life. Do you know how that feels? I mean, I don't know how it feels, but I can imagine how that feels, bro. That is sad, like proper sad. And smashing that kid's head till you can see the brain. And David Livingstone was like, oh my God, he was having nightmares. Oh my days. And Winston Churchill also played a part in trying to emancipate the whole slaves as well. Oh my, yo, this is sad, bro. Like, this is sad. I'm not gonna lie, this hits me deep in my heart. Okay, if the Western world hadn't intervened, oh my God, what would have been happening right now? Yo, this is mad. Thomas Sowell, thank you very much for this. We're going to do the part 2. Yo, this really hit my heart, hit me bad. And guys, thank you very much for this request. Okay, I'm happy I'm learning about these things. It's good to learn about history. All right, so I mean, same mistakes don't get repeated, but yo, this is sad, man. Yeah. And it's me, your boy Shady One Only. Thanks for this video, guys. It's gonna be a peace out from me. Okay, it's gonna be a peace out, guys. Peace out.
Boy, Mr. Shady. Oh.